Hello. All right. Let's hope that this all works. No, let's go back to this. Hello. All right, cool. I guess it sounds all right. Trying to say, hello, 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 hello. I can't tell. I see there's a couple of you in the chat room. Just let me know if I sound okay. Um, I'm trying to figure out whether or not the audio is coming through clearly or not on this microphone. And if it's not, then obviously I have a problem and I need to figure something else out. It worked okay last night. It looks like it's picking up and working okay, but I can't tell. So I guess let me know if you're hanging out in the chat room with me. Um, and yeah, let me know. Cool. All righty, Roo. Let's see if anybody else pops in. Give me some feedback, folks. There's two of you in here. I don't know who you are. Say hello. Don't leave me to my devices. Otherwise, I'm just going to start making shit because I have to make stuff tonight anyway. I'm busy. Um, I'm working on a one shot, and part of that is making a bunch of Touré. Oh, huzzah! Coming through clear. Thank you very much for that feedback. So yeah, I've been playing with Twitch. It's something that I've wanted to do for quite some time for the Geek Stuff channel. I want to start experimenting more with it in that platform. Um, but I decided that I know a lot of people use Twitch for creative reasons, and I thought that maybe I would just start doing creative stuff as well with it. So that's my goal, really, is to just do creative work, at least for a little bit. Tonight, I'm going to be doing some terrain. I'm working on making snow terrain for an upcoming D&D game that I want to run. It's a one shot. It's a Christmas themed one shot. Um, yeah, so I figure I have to get the work done anyway, and I'm new to messing around with Twitch, and so I thought I would give it a go. I'm just gonna throw this up on Instagram real quick, and we can go. Let's see. Not soon. Now. Come hang on Twitch with me. Pretty please. Twitch.tv. Excellent. Geek Stuff listener here, and you turned me onto a Critical Role, so I'm excited. Awesome, Chris. That's great, man. I became obsessed with Critical Role. So I've been a long time D&D guy, and years ago, growing up, I played all the time, and I had stopped playing. Um, I had run, I don't know, I just kind of ran out of ways to play. I ran out of groups to play with, and then it became a time constraint issue, and so I had kind of just followed it loosely. We talked about it on Geek Stuff all the time. Hey, what's up, Giddles? And then another listener of the show, a patron who hangs out in our chat room all the time, Jung, who used to be on Eric Nagel's show with us a bunch. Good dude. Him and Giddles both turned me on to Critical Role. Giddles was like, you gotta check this shit out. I think you'd really like it. And then Jung confirmed, and I jumped in 2 feet. And it was all downhill from there. I went right back to playing Dungeons and Dragons hardcore. Well, being into Dungeons and Dragons, reading about it, checking out fifth edition, and then my creative side kicked in, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna start creating some terrain again," because it was always one of my favorite things to do is to sculpt with foam and paint minis and stuff like that. I was never great at it, but it's something I like to do. And from there, it snowballed. Eventually, another friend of mine asked me to run a game for him and some coworkers, and I gave it a thought and I banded it around for a little bit. And eventually, I took a crack at running that game. And the first couple of sessions were me and one other person, the guy that I was running it for. And then I brought in another player. Giddles has actually since joined the game. And the three of us, when we actually get to play, we have a lot of fun. But I'm going to be running a like a holiday themed one shot coming up. Um, I can I can give a little bit away because I've told the people who are playing in the one shot the basic theme. But um, the basic theme is going to be a series of deep gnomes, which are gnomes that live in the Underdark, are trying to rescue some of their friends who have been kidnapped and enslaved by Santa Claus. Santa Claus is using them as slave labor to mine coal for bad boys and girls. So Santa's kind of walking that creepy line. I think it'll be a lot of fun, but out of that necessity came the need to create some sort of snow terrain. I like creating terrain. I'm a 3D D&D player. And so yeah, we're gonna take a crack at it tonight. I'm gonna kind of go through some of the processes from start to finish, but I do have to glue one thing down first just to let it set, and then we'll get into the foam and where we start. If you guys have any questions or if there's anything else you want to talk about, we don't have to talk about D&D. We can talk about pretty much anything you want. Um, so I have a piece here of pink XPS foam, and it's already been sculpted and it's been painted, and I am about to glue it down to a piece of chipboard. The chipboard acts as an extra base. It makes it a little bit sturdy, and it'll help protect some of the edges. But I'm going to go through some of this with you guys in a minute as soon as I get this down. I just had to get that glued first. And like I said, if you guys want to talk about anything else, talk about geek stuff, talk about the Avengers trailer, you want to talk about D&D, you want to talk about Critical Role, you want to talk about terrain, we can talk about any of those things. All right, so I'm going to put this off to the side. We'll come back to this in a little bit. Let's kind of kick off how terrain building starts. Pink XPS foam. XPS foam is the kind of foam that you use in construction. It's insulation foam. They sell it in big ass sheets at like Home Depot or Lowe's or any of those big box stores. You can get it on Amazon as well. And it is a terrain creator's best friend because it's really sturdy. It's easy to sculpt. It's easy to paint. Um, and you can pretty much do anything you want with it, sculpting wise. I've made some pretty good stuff out of it. Actually, you know what? Maybe before I get to sculpting this piece, um, I mean, Giddles has seen some of this stuff because he's played in my games. But here's like a little wizard's tower that I created for our game. Um, I have here. I'll put this one under the better cam. This is a portal I created. I don't know how well you can see it, but the last two one shots I saw in Crit Roll were pretty hysterical. Dude, the one shots are some of the best, man. Yeah, the one shots are absolutely some of the best. I'm really looking forward to the Search for Grog, which is the next one shot that's coming up, I think. It's kind of a throwback to the Vox Machina Season 1 Critical Role. Is what West Virginia? Gittles is what West Virginia. So anyway, this is a portal I created. Um, so that's kind of cool. Gittles has seen some of the other buildings I've made. Do I have any of them here? Oh, I do. They're over there. I'm not going to get them right now. So yeah, so whenever you're making just about any kind of terrain, a lot of people do it in cardboard. I don't like doing it in cardboard. I don't find it to be as sturdy. I like using foam. I actually have a hot wire foam cutter table, which kind of looks like it looks like a table saw, but instead of a blade, or it looks like a scroll saw, I guess, but instead of a blade, it's got a long hot wire, and um, it's got a long hot wire, and um, the wire heats up, and it cuts and melts through the foam. And when you Gittles, the audio was low. Is that any better now? I'm using a headset mic because I don't have a USB mic. I have to probably invest in that at some point in time. And I couldn't get my regular podcast mic to feed through the board and into Twitch. So maybe it's just a matter of positioning the mic a little bit better around my mouth. Um, so I have a hot wire table that you can cut the foam with, but there's also a hand cutter that you can use. So that's what I'm going to be using now. Um, so this, I know it's kind of hard to see. Maybe if I hold it under here. Can you guys see that any better? Yeah, okay. So this is a hot wire cutter. It's pretty much a bow. Um, it's got a wire. Again, the wire heats up. You'll see this wire. Yes, mic position helps. You know what? I'm new. I'm new to the live streaming. I'm new to this headset because I don't play a lot of online games. I'm trying. I'm trying. Some people say they're gonna try, and say that for a lot of years and then never actually do it. But I'm trying. So here's my hot wire cutter. You'll see, or you should see, as it warms up, that that wire that wire will get pretty hot. Sometimes it'll actually turn red. Oop, it's smoking. So the good thing about this is it cuts through this foam literally like butter. So whenever I'm making terrain, I normally just start with some sort of generic. Um, it is like a big cheese cutter. It actually works the same way a cheese cutter does. Just the cheese cutter doesn't heat up because you would just melt the cheese that way. So with this, you can you'll see, but it'll cut through this foam really easily. Um, so let's see if I can get a look into here. I always just kind of go with a generic. Can I position this a little bit better for you guys? Yeah, I always go with some sort of. Dude, you could buy one of these as a cheese cutter, Gittles. They're like $20 on Amazon. I always kind of just go with some sort of generic natural shape. It makes, because you're making some sort of hill or boulder or rock or something like that. So again, you can cut through this pretty easily just to get some sort of basic shape done. And then we'll sculpt it a little bit more using the cutter again, using the using a sharp um, using a sharp razor blade. Hey, missus, what's going on? One fist distance from the. Yeah, but see, I was doing one fist. One fist was like here, but on a headset mic, you have to practically be, you have to be naughty with the mic in order for it to pick up properly. So yeah. Stern. Wow, the olden days. So yeah, you can kind of just carve and cut with this, and make some, again, make some shapes, whatever you want to do. And um, as you paint this later, you'll see where it helps, what it'll allow you to do. You can highlight it. We're gonna go. You'll see some of the other tools I use. We're not gonna actually paint this one tonight. I just wanted to carve it. I wanted to show you guys the hot wire cutter. Word of advice: if you ever decide you want to cut with XPS foam, if the smoke coming off of it is black, stop. Black smoke on XPS foam is toxic, so you don't want to have that. The white wispy smoke you see is actually just water vapor that's coming from the interior of the foam. Um, and that is harmless, but black smoke is no good. All right, let's see. Let's just put a couple of more. I don't know. Let's come down here a little bit. We'll add a little dimension down here. Now, when I'm making regular rock terrain, that's not going to be snow covered. Normally, what I do is I will go from this step that we're at right now. And dude, it is a lot of fun, man. It's really cathartic. I sit in the basement and I have these big sheets of that XPS foam because you could buy they're like 8 feet tall by a couple feet wide, and you could just hack at it all day long. Um, yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. So when I'm not making snow terrain, and I'll show you something else uh, right now. Giddles is actually seen. Oh, hold on one sec. Can I reach this without losing the mic? There we go. Giddles has seen something like this before, but um, so this is just a large piece of stone that I used for a mountain pass that the characters that we were walking through went through. And you could see I kind of kept it just with fine edges. It was kind of cliff-like. The paint job on it was really basic, really simple. This one was easy to do. I did use some texture up top, like sand and grit, to give it a little bit of texture and give it a little bit of dimension. But we're going to do something a little bit different for snow because snow, when it falls, tends to be less, um, it's not as rigid and it's not as angular as a regular rock would be. So one thing you can do to sort of soften up those edges a little bit is use a heat gun. When um, when you do a regular piece of terrain, if it's a building, if it's a rock, if it's I don't know, if it's whatever else you like, you're making a well or something like that. I've made wells before. Anything like that. Normally at this stage, you would cover the foam with Mod Podge mixed with black acrylic paint. And what that does is it seals the foam, it makes it hard, and it protects it from when you're using it during gameplay. It won't break, it won't ding. This, I mean, this can be dented pretty easy. Yeah, I'll show you on the bottom, but I mean, it doesn't take a lot to dent that foam. And you want to try to avoid that, obviously, on a piece that you want to have for a while. So normally you would coat this in Mod Podge and black paint. It would create a nice seal. It would harden it, and then from there you can paint it. That's essentially your primer. But with snow, you want to be able to texture it a little bit and you want to cauterize it. And I don't like having a black surface under the white paint because it just takes more coats of paint to cover it. So what I will use instead um, what I will use instead is I use a heat gun. And the heat gun um, will start to melt the foam on the surface. And what that does is it hardens the foam. It sort of cauterizes it, right? And it hardens it. But where you have all of these really sharp angles and edges here, right? You'll see those will start to fade and they'll soften a little bit. And that will really help you needing to um, avoid needing to prime it the same way that you would with any other piece of terrain. The other thing that you can do um, is for something like this, you could use like white house paint um, to prime it. So you have a much sturdier paint on there. So let's see how much, hopefully this doesn't make a ton of noise. Oh, good. The microphone's barely picking it up. So really, I just have my heat gun on low right now. Um, and it's hard to see, but you will see. Actually, let's go up lower. You'll see that you'll see some of those edges start to melt, and you'll see some of the. It actually gives it a little bit of texture too. Um, and it doesn't matter if it turns that dark purple because you will be covering that with paint in a little bit. But you can kind of soften these up a little bit. You can soften up your bevel. You can soften up some of these ridge lines. Whoop. I was trying to not have to hold this while I did it, but this just again, it kind of you're actually sculpting the foam at this point with the heat of the gun. All right. So there you go. That is now cauterized. It's a lot harder than it was before. It won't ding as easily, and it's ready to be painted. This piece here is a little bit flimsy, so I'll actually probably just break that off, um, and then we can just clean it up, and that's it. Obviously, the foam changed color. It's a lot darker than it was before. Let's see if I can get you a little bit better light on the foam itself. So it's a little bit darker than it was before. Again, that's from the heat gun, um, but that's okay because, like I said, you're going to paint this white, and then you're going to add all sorts of other features to it, like right. It totally changes the look. I doubt Thomas can hear this through the wall. So yeah, it totally changes the look. It softened up a lot of these edges. These were all really sharp from when I sculpted them earlier, right? We had all those kind of crazy. We had all those kind of. Hold on, the heat gun is still really hot, so I'm trying to avoid putting it down on the ground. So hold on 1 second here. So you had all those crazy lines before in here, especially. I had kind of carved some lines in here, um, and the heat gun removes all of that. But when you paint this white now, it will look a little bit more natural than it did before. It will definitely take on a more organic look, which is obviously what you're going for. You don't want it to be as jagged because as snow falls, it kind of kills those jagged edges. So that's the main goal. So from here, I would paint this white. Um, glue it to a piece of chipboard, which you showed me, or which I showed you guys in a little bit, and we'll go from there. So I'm actually gonna bust out some chipboard now. And like I said, if you guys want to talk about something else, shoot the shit. Let me know. Talk about anything else. Talk about Avengers. Talk about. I'm drinking whiskey. Whiskey's good. Talk about what movies you saw this week. Anything. Um, like I said, I just needed to do this. So I just needed to get this stuff done anyway tonight. So I figured I would turn on Twitch. And have I seen Spider-Verse? No, I have not seen Spider-Verse yet. I'm super excited to see it because I'm a huge Spider-Ham fan. Um, he's like my favorite Elseworld Spider-Man character, and he is in it. So I really want to go see it. I also heard there's going to be a Spider-Ham McDonald's toy, so I'm gonna need that. I'm gonna need that piece. So this is a piece that I had previously cut, melted down a bit, um, and primed. I used white house paint to prime this. It's pretty. It's pretty rock solid. Like it would take a bit. It would take a lot more damage. Um, to do something to this. And actually, when I'm done with this, I'll probably give it a quick spray with some clear coat. Um, I hear to stay through the credits. Yeah, there's some sort of stinger at the end, but I don't know what it is. I know it doesn't tie into the film universe, but I don't know what the after credits stinger is. So I do want to see that. Um, all right, so this is glued down to a piece of chipboard. Chipboard is just sort of like sturdy, thick cardboard. It's not like corrugated cardboard, which, corrugated cardboard is where it has those little, like when you look at a box, right? Like any cardboard box that you have, and you look at it, it's a piece of cardboard, and you see that wavy bit between the two sandwiches of cardboard. That's corrugated cardboard. This is chipboard. It's a lot sturdier, it's a lot less flexible. I like to mount the snow to these because um, you'll see in a sec, but I'm going to add a little additional texture and sweeping nature to it um, to help with the design. You could mount anything. You could mount regular rocks to. You could mount regular rocks to chipboard if you wanted to, but you don't have to, obviously. Um, I don't normally. but for this, you'll see what I'm going to do in a second. So really, I'm just going to kind of just trace this a little bit. Well, actually, I don't even have to trace it because it's already mounted down, so I can kind of just cut this out. I'm just going to kind of cut this off of the chipboard, so we can go on to the next step. So crafting for D&D is really, you're using a lot of like household, um, you're using a lot of weird household products and hardware products. And don't you need a grid for the player pieces to manage their movement? All right, grid question. So there are a couple different solutions to this. When I play a normal game of D&D, I use a battle mat. A battle mat has a grid built into it. Let's see if I can here. So I use a battle mat, right? A battle mat has a grid built into it. The grid is 1 inch by 1 inch. Um, each box represents 10 feet of movement. You can make it 5 feet of movement, depending on what kind of, I guess, depending on what kind of dungeon you're in or terrain you're in. But normally it's 10 feet of movement is what the box represents. I'm sorry, no, normally it's 5 feet of movement. You can make it 10. So, however, if you don't do it that way, we use a handy dandy tape measure. And again, every inch represents 5 feet of movement. When I for this terrain, I don't actually have a battle mat um, that accurately represents snow. So I probably will use, or I know already what I'm going to use. I'm going to use a piece of white foam board from the dollar store, and I am not going to draw grid lines on it because that's a level of insanity that I'm just not comfortable with. I'll probably add some texture to it, maybe a little bit of flocking, which we'll get to in a minute. And then when we play, I'll use the tape measure to um, to calculate movement. So there are multiple ways to do it. In the olden days, we used grid paper. That's pretty much all we had. So dollar store is great for Yo, dude, dollar store is the best. I get foam board from there. I get tea lights like I use for the portal from there. They sell like moss. They sell all sorts of colored stones. They sell different colored sands, which I've used from there before. Um, they sell glue sticks. They sell, I don't know. I bought today. I bought a bunch of minis. They were holiday decorations, right, for like little Christmas villages, and there was a Santa and a snowman and a couple of like generic, yeah, like a couple of generic figures. Around Halloween time, I bought some like headstones and gravestones, like some creepy gazebos, like all sorts of weird shit that you can use. Um, yeah, dollar store is the best. I've actually purchased houses from there before too, and then reskinned them using cardboard or using um, really thinly cut XPS foam. So with a hot wire cutter, not with the tool that I was using earlier, but with a regular hot wire cutter, you can cut. I've gotten foam as thin as a dollar bill. That big thick foam that I'm using, I've gotten it as thin as a dollar bill using using my hot wire cutter. So you have a lot of mobility with that stuff. It's pretty awesome. So I got to get this off of this chipboard real quick. The one thing I wish that the dollar store by me had, uh, aw, I could be a hand model. Thanks, Trevor. Um, so yeah, the one thing I wish my dollar store had, which it does not have, unfortunately, is it doesn't have 5-minute epoxy, and I use 5-minute epoxy for water effects, like for small streams, lakes. I use it for the well water when I made the well. Sewer tiles, it's really good for because it cures really fast. You can add pigment to it, so you can color it anything you want. It adheres to the foam really easily, um, and it's super quick drying. Because if you buy any kind of other clear epoxy from like an arts and crafts store or from a place like Woodland Scenics, um, it takes a considerable longer time to dry. We're actually going to play with some Woodland Scenics water effects tonight if I get that far. We'll see. Let's get that off the chipboard. All right, we can carve this down a little bit. Thanks, man. So I have my webcam that I'm using up there, which is normally the webcam I would use for showing off my battle mat when I'm playing D&D, and then the second cam is just my laptop built-in camera. It took me a little bit today to figure out how to get both cameras working at the same time, but you know, I'm motivated to learn. I'm motivated to learn. I'll figure it all out eventually. This does not have to be perfect because we're going to cover it in a little bit. Um, we're going to cover it in a little bit with um, some caulk. Caulk. I just want to cut. I like to cut out some of these really harsh angles, give them a little bit more of a curve, because you don't have that kind of harsh angle normally when looking at natural rock structures and features and stuff like that. So that's what I'm working on now. Who else is watching? There's like 6 of you in the room or 7 of you in the room, but only 2 of you or 3 of you are talking. Say hello, Garsh, darn it. I feel like a dummy otherwise. So Giddles, obviously I'm making some of this snow terrain for the one shot. So I mean, I don't know about you, Trevor. I tend to wear pants most of the time anyway. I mean, do you free ball a lot? I mean, if you do, that's you. I don't free ball all that often. I have a cat that likes to jump in my lap, and I'm pretty sure if I free balled often enough, he would pierce my bag. So there's that. All right. So following the steps, we took a piece of XPS foam, we carved it out with the hot wire cutter, right? We painted it with some, in this case, with some house paint, um, just to give it that obvious white coat that you want. We glued it down to uh, is there not allowed to be booze in a stream? I don't know. If there's not allowed to be booze in the stream, then I'm breaking rules. But I wanted booze. It's not booze, it's apple juice. So I glued it down to a piece of chipboard. The chipboard gives it a little bit of structure, and you'll see in a second what else I do with it. I just want to trim this back over here a little bit more. There's no doubt in my mind that Jules was trying to get in here earlier. Jules normally joins the D&D campaign at some point in time. That's why I call him my tabaxi. All right, that's not bad. That'll do it. Let's trim this on this side a little bit. I don't need the chipboard to be too big. I just need a little bit of extra texture and a little bit of extra basing for what we're going to do next. All right, cool. I was gonna say on fucking not on Critical Role, not on Talks Machina, on Between the Sheets, the other show that Brian W. Foster hosts, where he interviews people associated with Geek and Sundry and Critical Role. He does a drink of the week. Like, I know he drinks on that show. All right, so next step. Sorry, Trevor, you're not going to get to see my beautiful, beautiful hands anymore. I have to put on a glove for this next step. I mean, I guess I don't have to put on a glove for this next step, but I've worked with caulking plenty of times to know that it's less than pleasant. Um, it's less than pleasant when it gets on your hands. So glove. All right. So I have some regular uh, Dap Acrylic all-purpose caulk. Um, this stuff is great. It's resealable. I like it in the tube versus a caulk gun. Um, no, Giddles, not too much caulk on my hands. That leads to things getting messy rather quickly. Um, it's not too expensive, this caulk. It's easier to work with than when you have a caulk gun. If you've ever used a caulk gun to, I don't know, redo a bathroom or redo a sink, it gets messy real quick. It tends to dribble out. Um, as Dr. Steve would say, fluids. So I find the little tubes a little bit easier to work with. So we're just going to. This is a brand new. This is a brand new uh, bit here. So I just got to cut the tip off. Perfect. All right. So what does the caulk do? The caulk is going to add a little bit of texture um, to the foam. It's also going to act as a little bit of a bonding agent between the foam and the chipboard where the hot glue may have missed. It's going to fill in the gaps between the hot glue and the foam. Um, and it paints really easily and it dries really easily. So you just go around here, you just put a bead along the edge, right? You can go around the whole thing, put a little bit here. Again, pay extra attention to the seam because you want the seam to be sealed later. You don't want there to be a gap there. Now I know at this point it doesn't look very messy and the need for the gloves is sort of pointless, but I don't know do I need how I couldn't I couldn't figure out how to put a donation button, Trevor. If you would have helped me like I asked you to. A bead of what? A bead of caulk. So a bead of do you have you ever used caulk before, Chris? A bead of caulk is just a real thin layer of caulk or a real thin I mean you could barely see it there, but it's a little bit thicker here, but you'll see why in a second. So I don't mean an actual craft bead. I mean just a little tiny bit of the caulk. So glass of regular water, finger goes in the water, and you can actually just spread the caulk now with your hand. Cover the edges here, right? Again, work it into all of the crevices that you have. We'll go back later on and we'll throw some white paint on this um, to um, to make sure any of the cardboard that isn't um, covered, like along the rough edge here, that'll all be covered with white paint later on. So snow terrain is actually one of the more complicated terrains. If I was making just some hills, regular like gray hills or brown hills, this would have been done already. Um, Trevor, how do I get a tip button? Educate me, teach me, learn me. Not that you want to tip me, but just so I know in general. So I'm spreading this caulk around this entire base here. The water helps smooth it a little bit. It's going to make it take a little bit longer to dry, but it makes it easier to apply it because we're not using it the way you would use it in a bathroom, right? We're using it a bit more. Um, we're using it a bit more sparingly than you normally would. Um, so yeah. All right. So another little thing you can do once you kind of get all of that sort of sealed up, just a little bit here and there, right? We're going to spread this across the foam and then we're going to stipple it a little bit with our finger and it will add further texture to the foam so that it doesn't look like just flat white surfaces. When you paint this with your paintbrush, you don't really do fine brush strokes. You kind of tap it also for the same reason. You don't want real real strong brush strokes. So now with it like with this consistency, not a ton of water on your fingers, you're going to start creating a little bit of texture. Um, that again, you're going to repaint this just lightly later on, but it will help you. It'll help it look less like foam on cardboard once it's dried and painted again. You can smooth it out a little bit in certain areas that you want it to be smoothed out at. One of the biggest issues you have with this stuff is that it does take quite a while to what's it called, to dry, right? So I'm not going to be able to do much with this piece until tomorrow at this point. So we'll let it dry overnight. But that's the start of a piece of snow terrain like this. Um, so I actually plan on doing a second part of this tutorial maybe later in the week where I can go back and do some other things to it and with it. But um, but yeah, that's the start. I just want to go through a couple of other things. Um, so here, let's get that off. I feel like Dr. Frankenfooter. All right. All right, that's garbage. All right, so I have here another piece of foam that I've already primed. Um, uh, this one I didn't put on any chipboard yet. It's a little bit bigger, and I don't think I'm actually going to put it on chipboard because of it. I saw something about adding a tip jar, Trevor, but I had to do a window capture, and I couldn't get the window capture overlay to work with the rest of the video. I don't know. I'm still learning. You gotta help me. But isn't there a way to make a tip without a tip jar? Isn't there some sort of like Twitch command /tip and then a value or something? I don't know. Figure it out for me. Help me, pal. All right, so this is another piece that I'm not going to put on a piece of chipboard. It's a little bit bigger. I don't think I need it to be on chipboard. Um, I am going to do a little bit of the caulk again on this though, up top here, right across the base. And then I'm not going to leave it just to harden like the other one. I'm actually going to use a little bit of, you can put a button under your video where your bio would be. Yeah, but I didn't see that setting in Streamlabs. Right? So I mean, if I'm looking at my Streamlabs live screen, Trevor, and what I see on my Streamlabs live screen is exactly what you guys are seeing on Twitch. So I have another monitor over here with Twitch up so that I could kind of get a feel for what it looks like. So all I see is, so when I'm looking at it on Twitch, I see my video screens. I see where it says snow terrain, let's hope this works, which I named it. I see the category, which I picked as Dungeons and Dragons. Where do I don't see a bio. Am I missing something? Am I, oh, is it where it says it's empty here? All right. So do I do that in Twitch or do I do that? Okay, so it's on Twitch, not through Streamlabs. And I could put a tip button down there. All right, I'll try to mess with that later. So for this one, we are going to use a little bit of the caulk. Actually, I'm sorry, we're not going to use any caulk on this one. What we're going to do on this one is we're going to use a little bit of tacky glue. So for those of you who are familiar with glue, because who isn't, you have regular PBA glue. And then there is PVA, regular PVA glue is like Elmer's glue, right? It's kind of really watered down. And you could use that for something like we're about to do. And then there's tacky glue, which is obviously a significant amount less water. And then I think there's even a super tacky glue, which is pretty much paste. So this flows pretty nicely like Elmer's does, but it is a bit thicker, right? So what we're going to do here is we are going to create some little ridges here on the edge of these little divots that I have. And I'll show you why in a second. So when I was sculpting this piece, I wanted to have a couple of effects on it that were not just regular snow. I wanted to have a couple of effects on it um, that were ice. And there is a company called Woodland Scenics. Woodland Scenics makes this stuff called realistic water, and it's sort of just like a giant gel. Like I have a picture from Bridesmaids that says, "Help me, I'm poor." You click on it and you can donate to me. Sorry to keep interrupting. I blame Eric. Don't we all? No, but if you can tell me, if you could help me out, Trevor, with how to get that on there, because I honestly I don't know. I did try to mess around a little bit with it last night, and I must have not seen it the same way you're having a hard time seeing it now. I didn't see it last night, so um, I honestly don't know where it would be. You said it would be in settings, maybe? Because I know I linked my PayPal account. I know I linked my PayPal account to to the stream, so I did that part. Um, I see something that says my profile banner, but that's Twitch channel and videos, security notifications, connections, recommendations. All right, so I see a bio box. If I go under settings, profile, I see a bio box, but I don't see how to add any sort of tip jar. So maybe you can help me with that. All right, so what was I saying? Woodland Scenics. So Woodland Scenics, they are known for railroad terrain. People who do model railroads use a lot of their products, trees and tracks and sculptors and all sorts of foam that they make. And a lot of their stuff tends to be pretty expensive, right? Um, and the problem with that, obviously, is that it's pretty fucking expensive. Um, and that's why D&D crafters tend to be a bit more D&D crafters tend to be a bit more home improvement and less model terrain, because you're making something that has to be able to take a little bit of a beating. You're making something that um, is game ready, is playable, and so you don't need to spend a ton of money on it. The couple of places where I will buy Woodland Scenic stuff is flocking, um, because it's easier than making your own. For those of you who don't know what um, flocking is it's any sort of fine powder that you use to give texture to a sculpture. So it normally is used for stuff like grass or moss, and it's literally fine granules, sorry, of stuff. And I have 4 different types of flock. The fine turf flock. I've got green, like almost like a forest green, and then I have a um, like a burnt green almost, and I have a burnt green. I have um, forest green. I have almost a brown, and then I have the snow. Um, so yeah. So all I'm doing right now is I'm applying some of the tacky glue in a couple of spots along this terrain on the top here, because I'm going to add some of the snow flocking to it in a moment, just to add a little bit of texture and floof. And then when we're done adding a little bit of that, we're going to add a little bit of water effects too. So we're going to use, oh, boo. I normally have a plate up here and I forgot it downstairs. That's okay. You know what? I'll just use a different piece of chipboard. That's all. I have a bunch of this. All right. So I'll put this on the chipboard here. All right. So here. So the snow flocking, right? I mean, if you can see it, right? I mean, it's literally fine powdered flakes. And so, you could put it on, whatever you're using pretty easily, and it will adhere to wherever the glue is, right? And it'll help texture this in the places you want to have snow. The good thing about flocking is that whatever doesn't stick, you literally just take it off this piece of chipboard when you're done, and you put it right back in the container. Nothing gets wasted. All right, so pretty good. I think I covered just about everything. So here we go. Give it, kind of bounce it around a little bit, and then just tap it off a little bit. Now, it'll be hard to see, but you can see a little bit of the texture from wherever the flocking is sticking to the glue. One of the most important things to do with flocking, if you're using it yourself, is when you're done with it, you do need to give this some sort of spray with a clear coat, some sort of like Krylon clear coat or something along those lines, because what will happen if you do not do that is that this will continue to shed from now until the end of time. And it's one of the biggest things that people who craft with it forget to do. They forget that last step. And you're just creating a nightmare for yourself. So you're better off just taking that step. It takes about 3 seconds. Go out in your garage or go in your basement and open up all your windows. And just trying to see if I got all the spots that I wanted it to be on. I can always add more, a little bit more later. Yeah, that's fine for now. That's fine for tonight. I'll probably let that dry, go back and add. So what I'll do is I will go back once this is fully dried. And yes, waka flocking. Once this is fully dried, I will go back and I will use actually Elmer's glue that's watered down. So I will use actually even more, something that's even more watered down than Elmer's already is. And from there, I will be able to what's it called? Add more flocking, add a little bit of depth to it, and we're just going to put this over here until I can get that onto something a little more malleable. All right, so one other thing we can do to this, which I want to do in some of the grooves that I have, woodland scenics, again, there are certain things that I will use them for. I said earlier that I use 5-minute epoxy for water. It's really good for water. It's really good if you add a little bit of pigment to it. So if you're doing like bog water, or if you're doing, some unnaturally blue water, something along those lines, it works really well. But if you're doing something a bit more clear, more still water, the Woodland Scenics realistic water is probably one of the best ways to go. So what I'm going to do, this is a brand new bottle of this. I haven't used this bottle yet. I had another bottle not so long ago. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of this in some of these ruts here that you see, right? And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want it to dry and look like that's where some ice has formed. So when I was sculpting this, I put these divots in there so that I could fill it eventually with the realistic water um, and create that effect. Okay, so first thing, I'm currently hosting your channel on Podcast Dummies Twitch channel as well. Hopefully more followers for you. Oh, thank you. Second thing, sent you an email. 2 links for the first one tells you how to edit on Twitch. Second link tells you how to set up a donation button. Yay! Oh, I am beautiful. Thank you, Trevor. You're a sweetheart. All right, so these ones here, you can see they run off pretty quickly. So what I need to do is I need to use just a little bit of this tacky glue to seal off this area. And then when I pour the realistic water in there, it won't go past the glue. The glue is going to dry pretty clear, and I can go back and add a little bit more flocking later. The other thing that I can do, that I'm going to do with some of these deep ridges over here, is Woodland Scenics makes a second product that's called Water Effects. Here, I'll show you. Water Effects is a sculptable clear gel. And you can use it to do things like waterfalls. You can use it for icicles. It's kind of hard to see. I'll try to show you on the camera the best that I can, but yeah, the lighting's just not that good. But you'll see there's a little picture here of a waterfall that they've used. That's actually not a real waterfall in the picture, believe it or not. It is what they use this for. For icicles, which I will do a demonstration of. Actually, before we go tonight, I can make some of them because they take a while to dry. But really, all you do is you take a small bead of this, you put it on a piece of parchment paper or plastic, anything, you'll be able to peel it off later. And then when it fully dries, it will harden and look like clear ice. And then with a little bit of glue or epoxy, you can attach it to wherever you want and have it look like a runoff. So, final thing, and then I promise to leave you alone. Please, ask your viewers to drop a follow not only on your page, but twitch.tv podcast dummies or Gittles got it. Actually, Trevor, do me a favor. I know you just sent me an email. Send me one more email explaining to me how you host another channel. I know that that's possible, but I would love to host podcast dummies through my channel as well. So just send me that information. I'd love to do that. All right. So I'm going to pour just a tiny little bit of this into one of these grooves here. So it's pretty viscous. It will run. I'm okay if it kind of barrels over this line here in the middle. It doesn't need to be perfect because if ice was forming and there was moisture, that's what would happen, right? You would have this sort of overflow as the water filled the trench and then eventually spilled over. And so it's okay. And trust me, when this dries, it will look, it'll be a lot thicker than it is right now. And it should look like ice. So the next time I stream, I'll show you guys the after effects of having let this dry. So, like I said, that's going to dry. It's going to be pretty much crystal clear when it dries. And I've seen this stuff in effect. It damn well looks like freaking ice, man. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool effect. So I'm pretty stoked to see how these look tomorrow. I'll probably post some pictures on Instagram tomorrow just to show you guys what they look like. This next bit is going to be a lot trickier than I thought it was going to be because these are really big runoffs. So I need to build up this layer here a little bit. Instead of using tacky glue, I could use small beads of hot glue, but I am going to go back over this with a little bit of paint and flocking later. And the tacky glue, when it dries and hardens, is much easier to paint than um, than hot glue. Hot glue, no matter what you do to it, um, never quite never quite paints right. It always looks a little bit more translucent than it should, and it's kind of annoying. Pisses me off. So yeah, so we're not going to worry about that right now. Let's see if I can do this without getting it all over my table. Like I said, the liquid tends to be pretty viscous. So if I can get it to just hit that glue line. Oh, shit. That's okay. That's all right. Um, the good thing about this is you can also add a second layer of it once it dries. So um, I'm not too worried about that happening. I got sloppy. It's all right. It's not unsalvageable. I wasn't paying attention, is what happened there. It's okay. It'll dry. So yeah. So I gotta get a little bit more in there as well. Just a tiny bit in there. Oop. And I think that'll be enough for now. Perfect. I'm pretty psyched. And then I will go back through and I will add some icicles and some additional stuff like that um, later. But for now, I'm pretty stoked for how this looks. Um, we're going to do one last thing before I cut off the stream for tonight. Um, I do want to thank everybody who came and hung out. It was great. You guys are awesome for spending some time with me. I know this was a bit nerdy, but a lot of you have actually asked for it. It's the only reason I decided to do it. People on Instagram had asked me to do it. A couple people on Discord had asked me to do it. Um, and I had toyed with doing it for a while just for Patreon, but I decided I thought it would be more fun to try to stream it. Um, and I hope to do other things with this Twitch channel. I'm not gonna just be making D&D shit all the time. I'm gonna be doing some toy reviews. I'll be doing some unboxing stuff. Um, we're gonna actually stream the one shot campaign with Giddles and some other people when I get that up and running. That'll be in a couple of weeks, so I think that'll be a lot of fun. Um, yeah, yeah. All right. So one last thing before we go for the night. I just need a small piece of plastic. Actually, you know what? I don't need a small piece of plastic. I can use the latex from the glove. That'll work too. All right. So I want to just show you guys real quick how you go about using this other stuff to make the ice. And I just want to show you the texture of it because it is really quite thick. Um, and I think you'll be surprised at just how thick it actually is. Um, and I think if I show you the effects of doing it now, it'll look cooler when it's done, when it's said and done, when I show you how to apply them to the model later. All right, so this is the realistic water effects that Woodland Scenics makes. This also has to be snipped at the top, yeah? All right. I forget what this one, I haven't had a bottle of this in a while. Just a little tiny snip up top. I don't want the hole on this one to be too big. I want it to be a pretty small, fine bead that I get out of here. So I'm trying to just keep it light. There we go. All right. So normally I would do this on parchment paper or a small piece of plastic, but it works really well on the latex as well. I've actually had to do this before in a pinch. Um, so this comes out and it's thick white, right? But when it dries, it's going to be completely translucent. Um, and um, Yeah, so all I'm doing now is I'm just making some sort of, you know, shapes of maybe an icicle or what an icicle would look like if it was hanging down. That's got to be a little bit thicker for it to work. And these will peel off the glove or the parchment paper or whatever else you use. And you'll be able to glue them or affix them to whatever you want once they dry. So I'm going to leave these here overnight. I'll take some photos and post them online tomorrow. And then the next time I stream, I'll show you what they look like once I've actually attached them to what it is we created. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. We're at just over an hour now. So I wanted to say again, thank you to everybody who hung out with me tonight. I know for some of you it was probably boring as shit, but I appreciate the time you spent with me. Um, I think that's it. I'm going to sign off for now. I have some other stuff to do, but thank you again, and peace out.